It's go time. With just over 20 games left in the MLB season, the Mariners are making the push to make the playoffs for the second time since 2001. So let's go over all the different scenarios for the Mariners making the playoffs, and also the one scenario where they don't make the playoffs. And there's actually one scenario that is obviously better than all the rest. We'll talk about that one last, suspense and whatnot. Also, I'm sorry if I sound funny. I am under the weather, LOL. So as of the time of recording this is what the MLB playoff picture looks like. We have the Mariners as the 5 seed, the second wild card spot, and they would take on the first wild card spot, that being the Tampa Bay Rays. Obviously, while you're watching this, they're playing the Tampa Bay Rays, but more than likely the Rays are going to take that first wild card spot because they're not going to win the division over the Baltimore Orioles, more than likely. And the Rays are so far ahead of all the other teams, there's a good chance that this is just where they stay. Looking at the standings, yeah, the Mariners are like 6.5 back of Tampa Bay for that first wildcard spot, so there's a very unlikely chance that they catch them. But first, let's talk about the one way the Mariners don't make the playoffs, and the only team to worry about is Texas and Toronto. In my opinion, Boston's out of it. 5 games back with just over 20 to play. There's no chance, in my opinion, that they make the playoffs. So really, we're just looking at Texas. There are 4 teams vying for 3 spots. Now, obviously, Texas is pretty scary because we all know those last 10 games of the season, the Mariners played Texas 7 times. So of course, if Texas thwarts the Mariners in those games, there's a decent chance that the Mariners fall out of the playoffs if the Blue Jays play well as well. But we all know how bad Texas has been recently, and it's been a struggle. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Of course, they had that 8 or 9 game losing streak. Max Scherzer's looked really bad, and they just lost to Adolis Garcia for the rest of the season. But nonetheless, let's say, for example, the Mariners play poorly versus Texas those 7 games at the end of the season. There's a decent chance that the Texas Rangers would hop over the Seattle Mariners. They're 2 games back of them right now. So the Mariners do have a little bit of a buffer, and of course this could all change by the time we get to that point in about 2 or 3 weeks time. So let's just say the Mariners stay right where they're at. In the 5th seed as the second wild card, they would take on the Tampa Bay Rays, and if they won that, they would play the Baltimore Orioles in the division series. The Orioles are the 1 seed in the American League. In my opinion, other than of course not making the playoffs, this is the worst spot that you can be in. Of course, you would try to take down the Rays and their excellent pitching. We know how good they are in October. And then you would try to take down the best team in the American League. And then if you somehow manage to do that, you would then probably face either the Astros or I'd say the Blue Jays. I don't think that the Blue Jays are going to lose to the Twins. Probably either the Astros or the Blue Jays. We know the Mariners can take down the Astros, but I guess I would rather wait to see them in the ALCS. I'm not really sure. So we've gone over 2 options so far. One where the Mariners don't make the playoffs, and one where they stay right where they're at. Of course, there are just a couple of other options. In this scenario where they stay in the second wildcard spot, the Mariners would not have home field advantage in any of these games. At least until the AL Championship Series, where I think they would take home field advantage since they had the better record versus the Astros this year. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's how that works. But they'd have to play in Tampa Bay and in Baltimore. Honestly, the AL wildcard spots 1 and 2, so the 4th and 5th seed, they both kind of scare me. We talked about this a lot last year. Obviously, the Mariners finished in the second wildcard spot last year. They played the Toronto Blue Jays in Toronto. We all know how that went. But, of course, having to go in and face Tampa Bay again and then go on to face Baltimore, I don't love our chances there. So even if the Mariners somehow catch Tampa Bay, which again is pretty unlikely, I still don't love your chances. Of course, the AL wildcard would then be at home, so I guess it's a little bit better. But if you're going to take the wildcard, you really should want to be in wildcard 3. That's where the Blue Jays are right now, the 6th seed, and they would take on the worst of the 3 division winners, that being the Minnesota Twins. The Minnesota Twins are staying right here. They are not moving out of this spot right here. They are easily the worst of the division leaders, and they're not going to catch the other 2. So the Minnesota Twins are probably going to be seed 3. So if the Mariners fell to wildcard 3, they would take on the Twins at home, and then they'd go on to take on the Astros at home. I like this a little bit better because we know that the Mariners can beat the Astros. They've done it all season. Also, they should be able to beat the Twins. The Twins aren't that good of a baseball team. There's a reason why they're the worst of the division winners, and them being in the 3 spot is more of a formality than anything. Now, assuming that you win in the wild card and you're able to take down Houston in the ALDS, you'd move on to the ALCS where you'd probably play one of Baltimore, maybe Tampa Bay, and I guess I would even throw the Blue Jays in there because I think they're a good team that could beat these guys. In my opinion, this is one of the most interesting ways that this could go if the Mariners were to take the 3rd wild card spot, and then we would see who's the best team out of the 3 AL East teams in the Blue Jays, the Rays, and the Orioles. Now, obviously, the best thing that you can do is win the whole damn division, and there's a chance of that. The Mariners have a decent chance to win this division. They really, really do. That would of course put you in the 2nd seed in the American League. You'd have home field advantage in the ALDS, and you'd probably be taking on one of the Twins or I guess the Blue Jays if it stayed the way it is right now. Really, the only thing that you would do here is you'd switch spots the Mariners and the Houston Astros. So the Astros would be in the wild card versus the Rays and the Orioles, and then the Mariners would be right here taking on the winner of the Twins or the Blue Jays. Again, you have home field advantage in that series. Most of the games will be played at T-Mobile Park, and then you'd be taking on either the 3rd seed, who are the Twins, which again is a relatively easy series in my opinion. That's probably one of the better ones that you want to play in, or the Toronto Blue Jays, which the Blue Jays are very good, but I think the Mariners could handle them. In my opinion, you want to be in this upper part of the bracket here. And obviously, there's a decent chance that this could happen. The Mariners are 1 game out at the time of recording this. They could end up being just a half game out if they beat the Rays in game 1. And they take on the Astros 3 more times this season. Let's say, for example, the Mariners win the game against the Tampa Bay Rays at the time of recording this. They go to 79-61 with 22 games left to play. They would need 11 wins in those 22 games, so basically just to go 500 to reach 90 wins like they have the past 2 years. With that being said, however, the Mariners have the 3rd hardest strength of schedule left in the American League, behind the Tampa Bay Rays and Boston Red Sox. Of course, they do have 2 opponents under 500, being the Athletics and the Angels, but 3 against the Dodgers, 4 against the Rays, 3 when you're watching this, 7 against the Rangers, and 3 against the Astros. The Mariners have a gauntlet left to play. And then you have the Houston Astros, who have the 3rd easiest strength of schedule in all of MLB left. Of course, they have to take on the Mariners and the Orioles and the Diamondbacks, but they also have 3 games against the Athletics, 6 against the Royals, and 3 against the San Diego Padres. The road to winning the division is not a clear one for the Mariners. It's going to be tough, but the good news is that they own their own destiny. They control it. They have a chance to go in and play really good baseball over this last month and set themselves up for the best possible finish of the season. Again, you basically just need to go 500 to finish with 90 wins. Can you play 3 games above that and get to 93? I sure as hell hope so. Does that win you the division? I'm not sure. But again, there is a bright side if the Mariners don't play their best baseball, drop a couple of games, and end up in that 3rd wild card spot, because you get to take on the Twins, and then you get to go in and take on the Astros, who the Mariners have played really well this year. In my opinion, those are the 2 best spots for you to be in, either the 6th seed or the 2 seed. Seeds 4 and 5, I'm not a huge fan, especially having to go to Baltimore and take on the Orioles in the American League Division Series. I think that's just a much tougher road. I really do think that the 6th seed, if the Mariners can't win the division, which again, it's a gauntlet the rest of the year, and the Astros have a relatively easy strength of schedule, it's going to be tough. It really is. Can the Mariners do it? Absolutely. But they're going to need to see their pitching staff and whatnot step up. It's a worrisome time as a Mariners fan. We know how this team looks in September going into October, and it's always scary. But is it time to panic if you're a Mariners fan? Well, I'll tell you. In this video on the screen right now, I want you to check that one out. Appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.